Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another tutorial. As promised, we are gonna do now every single month an installation of Arch Linux on MBR and UEFI when there is a new ISO. The new ISO was released yesterday, so I'm creating here a tutorial to install the base of Arch Linux and just the base of Arch Linux, not the desktop environment. For that we have already videos on the channel. So I'm just gonna create a tutorial here for the base install of Arch Linux on both MBR and UEFI. And as I said, I'm gonna repeat this process every month, once a month, just to be up to date, because I have seen by creating tutorials in the past there are many changes to the ISO sometimes, and I would need to actually go back to the video and correct it or put an update on the description. It's probably easier to make a new tutorial just for the base install every month when the new ISO is there. It's more up to date and the changes are more in the base install than in the desktop environments anyway. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. So let's get started here. I actually booted up here my machine on the VM. I'm using KVM here for this example. And I installed already SSH on the VM so that I can log in through my terminal here on KDE. So it's easier for you to see the fonts and are also colored, so it's a little bit better for the contrast. Now, as you can see here, this is the typical Arch Linux ISO. Since the August ISO, we have this new menu here where we can actually navigate to the installation guide. We have this hint here on how we can connect to the Wi-Fi, and also after connecting to the internet, the installation guide can be accessed through the script, which is called installation_guide. Now, what I'm trying to do in this tutorial is I'm going to install the base of Arch Linux on UEFI and on MBR. So there are basically two differences here on the base install of Arch Linux for these two systems. One is the disk partitioning, and the second one is the grub installation, so the bootloader installation. You will see on the display a hint when what I'm doing is for both MBR and UEFI systems, and when I'll have to switch to MBR or UEFI, you will see also the clue here on the display. So this is a new system here to make the base installation of Arch Linux every month. Check out if there are new changes in the ISO, and also make the MBR and UEFI installation in one video. So I would say let's proceed and let's clean up the terminal. Now, the first thing you might want to do, you might want to change your keyboard layout if you don't have a US keyboard, because the ISO boots up with a US keyboard. So to change your keyboard layout, we can type in localtime and then list-key maps, then the pipe symbol, and we use the grep function to narrow down the search. Now, I have a Swiss keyboard which connotation is CH, so I'm going to type in CH here and hit enter. And you can see I get a list of results. The one I'm looking for is the first one. So to load this into the system, I can type in now load keys and then the string, so de_ch-latin1 and hit enter. Now this is done, so let's clean up the terminal and let's check for our internet connection. So let's type in IP space A. Now this is a VM here where I'm on right now, and because it has a cable connected, of course I have already an IP here ending with 188. And if you're using Ethernet, you should have an IP already up and running too. If you're using Wi-Fi, we need to use the new IWCTL utility, which started to be available in the July ISO. Now, I don't have a Wi-Fi in this VM, but I can show you the process. So what you want to do if you want to connect to Wi-Fi, the first thing you need to do is to type in IWCTL and hit enter. Now the prompt changed because we are now in the IWCTL utility. And the first thing we need to do, we need to find out the name of your Wi-Fi adapter. You might see it here in the list if you type before IP space A, and you might see here a number 3 with the name of your Wi-Fi adapter. But if you missed it or you cleaned up the terminal and you don't know anymore, you can type in now device list and hit enter. Now I don't have anything in here because I don't have any Wi-Fi adapter, but if you do have one, you will see the name under here. And we need this name to run the following commands. So the first command we need to run is to scan for the networks. So in this case, if you have a Wi-Fi adapter, you can type in station and then the name of your Wi-Fi adapter. Let's say for the sake of this video, my Wi-Fi adapter name would be WLAN0, and then scan. And then you can hit enter. Once you hit enter, your Wi-Fi adapter will scan for networks. Then the next command you will need to run is station and then the name of your Wi-Fi adapter. Again, I'm assuming mine is WLAN 0 and then get-networks. And when you hit enter, you will see the list of networks available. You will probably see yours and you want to connect, of course, to it. So what you can do here, you can replace get-networks with connect and then the network name. So you choose here basically your network. So I'm not going to type it in because I don't have one, but now you can type in the network name and hit enter. You will be asked then to enter your password. So you can enter your password and hit enter. And once you have done that, you'll be connected to your Wi-Fi. Now, once you have connected to the Wi-Fi, you can type in exit and you will go back to the root ISO. Now, if you type in again IP space A, you should see also your Wi-Fi adapter there with an IP address, and then we are good to go. So let's clean up the terminal and let's make sure that we have the best mirrors available for us when we install packages. To do this, we need to use Reflector, which is now actually included in the Arch ISO. So let's use Reflector to create a mirror list, and we can type in Reflector -C for country. Now you put in the country you are in. In my case, I'm in Switzerland. If you are in a country with two names like United States, you might want to put those between single quotes. And then -A to define the age of the servers. So I want to look for servers which have been updated only since 6 hours. So I'll type in 6 and then --sort. We want to sort these servers by speed. So rate is the parameter. And then --save because we need to save this information in the pacman.d directory. So the directory is /etc/pacman.d and then mirror list. And then we can hit enter. Now we can refresh once the servers by typing in pacman-syy and hit enter. And now we have the best servers available for us. So let's clean up the terminal. And now that we have an internet connection, we can synchronize the network time protocol by typing in time date ctl and then set-ntp and then true and hit enter. There you go. Now, let's begin partitioning our disk. So I'll begin with the UEFI system and then I'll switch over to my MBR system and you can see the process there. So let's type in lsblk and hit enter. So as you can see here, I have a disk called VDA and it's 50 gigabytes. It's a small disk, but that's enough for the purpose of this tutorial anyway. So what I want to do now, I want to partition this disk. Now, it's depending, of course, on the system you're using. If you're using an UEFI system or an MBR system, you will have a different partitioning scheme. If you are using an UEFI system, you will have to have a EFI partition because it's mandatory and also a root partition, which is also mandatory. You can optionally also create a home partition if you want to do that, but it's not mandatory. On an MBR system, you want to typically create a swap partition and a root partition, which is also mandatory. A home partition is also a possibility, but it's optional. I'm not going to create a swap partition on the UEFI system because later during the installation, I'm going to create a swap file anyway. So let's begin with the UEFI partitioning, and once it's done, I'll switch over to my other virtual machine with the MBR and do the partitioning for MBR there. So to partition the disk for UEFI systems, I'm going to use the gdisk utility, and so I'm going to type in gdisk and then /dev/vda and hit enter. So let's begin by creating our first partition, which is going to be our EFI partition. So I'll type in n for new and hit enter. Partition number 1 default is fine, so we can hit enter here. For the first sector, we can accept the defaults by hitting enter. And the last sector defines the size of the partition. I'm going to make this partition, let's say 200 megabytes. So I'll type in here plus 200 capital M. You can make it also 500 megabytes if you wish. It should be between 200 and 500 megabytes per the ArchWiki. And then we can hit enter. Now we need to define this as a EFI partition and we need to put in a code in here. Now if you don't know the code, you can type capital L, but I know the code for the EFI partition is EF00 and then we can hit enter. And you can see that it says change type of partition to EFI system partition. So that's fine. We can proceed now by creating our root partition. So let's type in n for new and hit enter. And now we can accept the default for partition number 2. So we can hit enter here. First sector is also fine, so we can accept here by hitting enter. And the last sector defines the size of the partition. In this case, I want to use the rest of the disk, so I'm not going to type in here anything and just hit enter. Now the current type is a Linux file system, which is fine, so I can just hit enter here to accept the default. The partitioning is done, so we need to write these changes to the disk, and to do this we can type in W and hit enter. Final checks complete, about to write GPT data. This will overwrite existing partitions, that's fine, so we can hit Y here and hit enter. And the partition table has been written to the disk. So let me clean up the terminal. And let me switch over to my MBR machine so that I can partition the disk for MBR systems. So let me switch here to the other machine. It's just going to take a second. And there you go. This is my MBR system. And as you can see, I already listed the disk here. I have the same disk. I have a 50 gigabytes disk here. Now, in this case, this is a MBR system. I'm going to use another partitioning tool here, which is CF disk. So I'm going to type in here CF disk and then /dev/VDA and hit enter. Now, this is a MBR system, so I'm going to choose a DOS disk label. So I select DOS here and hit enter. Now we have the free space, and the first partition I want to create here is the swap partition. Remember, this is an MBR system, so we don't need to create a UEFI partition. So I'm going to hit new here. And I want to define the partition size. So this is a swap partition, and this VM has 1 gigabyte of RAM, so it's a very small VM. And chances are, if you have an MBR system, you might have 2 or 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the rule of thumb here is to create a swap partition which is double of the size of the RAM. So in my case, I'm going to create a 2 gigabytes partition. Your case might vary. If you have 2 gigabytes of RAM or 4 gigabytes of RAM, you can create respectively 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes of swap. But if you have a 4 gigabytes of RAM, I will probably create a 4 gigabyte swaps maximum. Anyway, in my case here, I want to create a 2 gigabytes partition. So I'm going to type here 2 capital G and hit enter. And it's going to be a primary partition, so I can hit enter here. And I'll go to type and hit enter. And this is a swap partition, so it's a number 82, just one line above, and then hit enter. There you go. And you can see that on the top right, it says Linux swap. Now let's move down to the free space and hit new. And the rest here is going to be used in my case for the root partition, so I'm just going to accept the default here and hit enter. Again, it's a primary partition, so I can hit enter here. And the file system type, it's already Linux, so that's fine with me. What we need to do now, we need to go to write and hit enter. And are you sure you want to write the partition table to the disk? Yes, and hit enter. The partition table has been altered. So we can go now to quit and hit enter. And we can now clean up the terminal and type in lsblk. And you can see we have there our swap partition and our root partition. So this is for partitioning the MBR system. And now we can proceed by formatting our partitions. So I'm going to switch over to UEFI one more time, and then I'll switch back here for the MBR system in a second. So this is a EFI system. You can see we have here the 200 megabytes EFI partition, and the rest is the root partition. So let's format these partitions. The first one is the EFI partition. So I'm going to format this with the FAT file system type. So we can type in mkfs for make file system .fat, and we need to define the file system type, which is a FAT32 file system type. So dash capital F32, and then the partition name, which is /dev/VDA1. And hit enter. Now we can repeat the process for the root partition, so we can type in mkfs.ext4 for the root partition. In this case, I'm going to use a ext4 file system type, and then the partition name is /dev/VDA2, and hit enter. And the formatting is done. Now, before I switch over to MBR, let's also mount these partitions. So let's clean up the terminal and type again lsblk. And let's mount first our root partition, VDA2, which is going to be mounted in the mount directory, which is our installation directory. So let's mount VDA2 by typing in mount /dev/VDA2 space /mnt. So the mount directory, and hit enter. Now we want to mount the EFI partition into the boot EFI directory in the system which is not existing yet. So we need to create that directory. So the Archwiki recommends you to boot the EFI directory into /boot or /boot EFI. Depending on your system, sometimes it's required to have EFI to install grub. So in this case, I'm going to do it on EFI, but you can also do it on boot. It's up to you really to decide. The Archwiki recommends one of those. So to create a boot and EFI directory, I can type in mkdir -p and then /mount. Remember, this is our installation directory, and then boot and then /EFI. So the P option basically allows us to create two directories at once, and then we can hit enter. Now we can mount the EFI partition in this directory by typing in mount /dev/vda1 and then the directory you want to mount in. So /mount /boot /EFI, and then we can hit enter. Now let's type in again lsblk. And you can see there we have our mount points. So the EFI partition is mounted on EFI and the root partition is mounted in mount. So let me switch over now to my MBR system to format and mount the partitions there. So let me go out of full screen here and pull up my other machine. There you go. So remember here we created a 2 GB swap partition and the rest is our root partition. Now the swap partition doesn't need to be formatted. We just need to format our root partition. So let's do this by typing in mkfs.ext4. The process here is the same as for the UEFI system. And then the partition name, which is /dev/vda2, and hit enter. Now let's clean up the terminal, lsblk. We need to now make the swap on the first partition. So let's type in mkswap and then /dev/vda1 and hit enter. And then we can activate the swap by typing in swap on /dev/vda1 and hit enter. There you go. Now we can mount our root partition into the mount directory the same way we did for the UEFI systems. So we can type in mount /dev/vda2 then /mount and hit enter. Type in lsblk, and you can see there we have our swap partition and our root partition is mounted under the mount directory. So these are the differences of partitioning between MBR and UEFI. So I'm going to switch over to the UEFI machine because then the process from here on until the grub installation is the same for both. So let me switch here to my other terminal. And again, this is the EFI system. So let's clean up the terminal. Now we need to install the base packages because we have already the partitions mounted. So to install the base packages, we can type in packstrap and then /mount because we need to install the packages in our installation directory, of course. The first package is base, and you want to install also Linux, our Linux kernel. And I want to install also Linux-firmware. And I want to install also an editor, which I will need later, which is Vim in my case. And if you have an Intel processor, you can type in Intel-ucode. And if you have an AMD processor, you can type in here AMD-ucode. Those two packages are providing extra firmware for your processor. My VM is using an AMD virtual machine, so I'm going to install the AMD-ucode package, and then we can hit enter. Now, it's going to take some time here to download and install the packages, so I'll be back when it's done. There you go. The packages are now installed, so we can clean up the terminal. And now we need to generate the file system table where all our mount points are stored. So this is the same process for both systems, so we can type in the command. So let's type in gen fstab and then -u. This means basically the file system table is going to be generated using the UUIDs of the partitions. And then /mount. And we are going to append this information to /mount /etc/fstab, and then we can hit enter. Now, if we type in cat /mount /etc/fstab and hit enter, you will see what's in there. So this is a UEFI system. So you see here your EFI partition and the root partition. In your MBR system, you will see, of course, your root partition and also the swap partition, which is mounted in there. Now it's time to move into the installation. So let's type in to do this for both systems, arch-chroot and then /mount and hit enter. You can see also the login prompt changed. That means we are not anymore in the ISO. We are working now on the system that we just installed. So let's clean up the terminal. And in the UEFI system here, the first thing I want to do is to create a swap file. Now, you don't need to do this if you are on an MBR system because we created already a swap partition, so you can skip this step. So to create our swap file, we can type in dd and then if equal /dev/0. of equals slash swap file. So we are creating now an empty swap file. We just need to define the size of it. So bs equal, this is the base of the count. In my case, I want to type in 1G. So the base is 1 gigabytes, and then count equal 2. That means I want to count the base twice. So 2 gigabytes swap file in my case. You can of course adjust this accordingly. And then status equal progress. And then hit enter. It's going to take a second to perform the command. There you go. Now we need to change the permissions of the swap file so that it can be read and wrote on. So we can type in chmod 600 and then slash swap file and hit enter. Now we need to make the swap the same way we did for the MBR system by typing in mkswap slash swap file and hit enter. And now we can activate the swap by typing in swap on slash swap file and hit enter. Now we need to put also the swap file in the Fstab file. So let's type in vim slash etsy slash Fstab and hit enter. Let's go down to the empty space here, enter insert mode, create a new line and type in here slash swap file. This is the name of the file. And then a tab key. The mount point is none. Then a tab again. File system type is swap. The options are default. And the dump and file system checks are 0 and 0. And then we can save the file and exit Vim. And the swap file is done. So let's clean up the terminal. And now let's continue working on our installation. Now from here on, it's the same process, except when we are going to install grub. So the first thing we want to do here is to work on our localization. So to find out your time zone, you can type in time date ctl list-time zones, and then the pipe symbol. And again, we use the grep function to narrow down the search. Now, the city closest to me is actually Zurich. You can, of course, change this accordingly and hit enter. And you can see I have only one result here, which is the time zone I need to put in the system. So to load this in the system, we can type in ln-sf/user, which is not a user directory, it's the Unix system resources directory, share, and then zoneinfo/Europe/Zurich. This is the string we just found. And then we can hit enter. Now we can synchronize the hardware clock to the system clock by typing in hwclock --sys2hc and hit enter. And this is done. So let's clean up the terminal and work on our locales. So to do this, we need to work on the locale.gem file. So let's type in vim/etsy/locale.gen and hit enter. Now we are basically looking for the locales here. So I want to look for English US. So I want to scroll down here until we find the English US I'm looking for, which is down right here. And we select the one which has UTF-8, and we just uncomment the line here by deleting the hashtag. Then we can save the file and exit Vim. And we can generate the locales now by typing in locale-gen and hit enter. Now this is done. We need to put also the locale into the locale.com file. So there are many ways to do this. We can use also the echo command, but I'm going to use Vim. So I'm going to type in vim/etsy/locale.conf and hit enter. And in here, I'm going to type in lang =en_us.utf-8. Now we can save the file and exit Vim. Now, if you chose a different keyboard layout at the beginning of the video, you want to put this also into the vconsole.com file. So to do this, we can type in vim/etsy/vconsole.conf and hit enter. And put in here the key map. So I'll type in key map equal the string I found at the beginning, which was de_ch-latin1. And then I can save the file and exit Vim. And now we can move on to the host name. So let's type in vim/etsy/hostname and hit enter. Now here we basically need to give a name to the machine. So let's type in here the machine name. In my case, I'm going to call Arch. Very simply, you can choose another name if you want to, of course. And then we can save the file and exit Vim. And now we can work on the hosts file. So we can type in vim/etsy/hosts and hit enter. Move down here to the empty space. And let's create our IPv4 address, which is 127.0.0.1, a tab, and then localhost. In the next line, the IPv6 address, which is ::1, tab, localhost again. and in the last line 127.0.1.1, then a tab, and then your host name, in my case arch.local domain, and then a tab again, and again our host name, so arch in my case. Then we can save the file and exit Vim. Now we can give a password to the root user, so we can type in passwd and hit enter. Enter the new password and retype it. So let me clean up the terminal. And let's proceed by installing the packages we need for our grub bootloader and also some other networking tools. So let's type in pacman-s. First package we need is grub. And then if you are on a UEFI system, you need to install also EFI boot MGR. You can skip this package if you are on an MBR system. And then I want to install network manager. And then I want to install also network-manager-applet. And I want to install also dialog and two packages for working with FAT file systems. One is mtools and the other one is DOS FS tools. I want to install also base-devel and also Linux-headers, two development packages. I want to install also blues for the Bluetooth adapter and also blues-utils. I want to install also CUPS, the printing system, also pulse audio, and also alsa-utils, two packages for the sound system. And I want to install also reflector and also git for installing packages from the AUR. And the last two packages are xdg-utils and also xdg-user-dirs for user directories. And then I can hit enter. Now we can proceed with installation here by hitting enter. And it's going to take some time now to download and install, so I'll be back when it's done. There you go, the packages are now installed. So let's clean up the terminal. The next step is to install the grub bootloader. So in this case, we are on a UEFI machine and there is a specific command for this. I'm going to switch over to the MBR machine in a second. So let's begin installing grub on a UEFI system by typing in grub-install and then --target equal x86_64-EFI. And then the second parameter is --EFI-directory equal, you remember we mounted our EFI directory under /boot/EFI and then --bootloader-id equal grub. And then we can hit enter. It's going to take a second to install. There you go. Now we can create the configuration file for grub. So we can type in grub-mkconfig-o, so the output of the configuration will go under /boot/grub into a file called grub.cfg and hit enter. There you go. Now let me switch over to the MBR machine so that you can see how it's done on an MBR system. So let me switch terminals here. It's going to take just a second. There you go. And this is our MBR machine. So I already installed grub here, so we can install it directly. And the process here is a little bit different. So to install grub here, we can type in grub-install and then --target equal. Now, because it's an MBR system, the target for grub, it's going to be i386-PC. And then we need to specify the disk name, not the partition name, but the disk name. So we can type in the disk name, which in our case is /dev/VDA, as you remember before. And then we can hit enter. There you go, installation finished, no error reported. And we can the same way generate the configuration file by typing in grub-mkconfig-o and then /boot/grub/grub.cfg and hit enter. And there you go. This is done for the MBR system. So I'll switch over again to the UEFI system to finish up the installation because the process is going to be the same for both. So let me do this very quickly. Now the process is going to be the same for both systems. So the first thing I want to do is to enable our services. So the first one is Network Manager, so that we have internet when we boot up the machine. So let's enable this by typing in systemctl enable Network Manager and hit enter. Let's enable also Bluetooth by pulling up the last command and replacing Network Manager with Bluetooth and hit enter. And also the CUPS printing system. So let's pull up the last command and replace Bluetooth here with org.cups.cupsd and hit enter. There you go. Let's clean up the terminal and create a user for the system. So we can type in user add -m capital G and then wheel and then the username you want to create. So in my case, my name, and hit enter. So we created a user here with my name in this case. The M switch is for creating a home directory and the capital G switch is to give this user a supplementary group, which is the wheel group in this case, which is going to be configured in a second for the sudo privileges. But before, let's give a password to this user by typing in passwd and then the username and hit enter. Create the password and retype it. Now, to give sudo privileges here, we need to type in editor, all capital letters, equal vim, and then vice sudo, and hit enter. Let's scroll down the file here with Control F until we find the wheel group we just talked about, and we need to select the first one, which has the line all equal all, and we need to delete here the hashtag to activate this option, and then we can save the file and exit vim. That means now every user which belongs to the wheel group will have sudo privileges in the system. So this is basically done for the base install. What we can do to verify that everything is working, we need to reboot the machine. So to do this, we need to type in first exit to go back to the root ISO. And let's unmount all the partitions by typing in umount -a and hit enter. And now we can reboot the machine by typing in reboot and hit enter. And I'm going to actually exit here SSH by typing in exit. There you go. I'm closing the terminal. And I'm going to pull up here my main virtual machine and type in here reboot and hit enter. Now, if everything went well, we should be greeted now by the grub bootloader. And there you go, this is grub. So we can hit Arch Linux and the system should boot up now fine. There you go, we can enter our username and the password. And we are logged in into our system. Let's type in IP space A. You can see we have already an IP here ending with 189. And if you have Wi-Fi, you can type in now nmtui and go to activate a connection. You will see the list of networks there. You can select yours, enter the password, and you'll have an IP as well. Now let's log out from here. And this is going to do it for the base install on UEFI and MBR. Now, if you want to install the graphic cards desktop environment, you can go ahead and look the tutorials for the various desktop environments or window managers that are already on the channel. The procedure for those is the same for both UEFI systems and MBR. So this is going to do it for this tutorial, and I'm going to update this installation again next month when the new ISO will be out. So there you go, this was the base install of Arch Linux on UEFI or MBR. As you can see, there were not many changes from the last ISO, which is a good thing. So as I said, I will do another install of Arch Linux the next month for the base install when the new ISO will be released. I hope you liked the video, guys. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and subs to the channel if you haven't already. Subs always helps us out. And if you want to support us, you can do so by visiting our Patreon website, or you can donate via PayPal through our website as well. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.